you franchised your business or are about to franchise your business. And so what are the mistakes you need to avoid in those critical first 2 years? And what's the reason why there's so many startup and emerging franchisors then the first 2 years of franchising don't get the traction that they deserve? So it's really critical, right? You put so much passion and energy into franchising your business. You're working with franchise lawyers, even a development team. Everyone's excited. But you really need to focus on what happens after you launch your franchise, what happens after you issue your FDD, and really reflect on why people don't gain traction, or why many startup franchisors don't gain traction in the first 2 years of franchising. We're going to tell you the 3 reasons why, or the biggest reasons why this happens. So the first one is you're relying too much on outside vendors. Now, I'm not saying you don't need outside vendors. You need a good lawyer, good accounting team. You need from a franchise law perspective, a lawyer that's going to really has a focus on your franchise development. But if you expect outside vendors, whether it's legal, accounting, PR, digital marketing, if you rely too much on them, and if you just believe that they're going to sell franchises for you and help grow your franchise system without you really getting involved in the franchising world, then what's going to happen is you're going to waste dollars and you're going to have disappointing results. Good vendors serve an important purpose. And the most important purpose is to really get you involved in the franchising world, give you a scope, some perspective on things you should be doing and shouldn't be doing. What are good benchmarks? What are best practices? For our clients, it's important that they get involved in the franchise world because you need to know what the right things are, what the wrong things are, where you could be wasting money, and really the need to do things differently from everyone else. Vendors are out there to make money, and sometimes startup and emerging franchisors don't have the budgets that they should. And so what happens is you get little mini solutions. Unfortunately, these mini solutions don't turn into results, or they may turn into a couple of franchise sales. But here we're talking about big, serious momentum. So mistake number 1, you certainly need good vendors. They're critical to your success, but don't over rely on them. Hold yourself accountable, learn franchising, get involved in the franchise world. The second mistake that's so critical and so many startup and emerging franchisors make is they launch their franchise, you start spending money on digital marketing, social media ads, even portals and joining broker networks, but you haven't built your brand story and your digital validation. As franchise systems grow, what's going to grow your system or successful franchise systems is 1, franchisee validation, and 2, good unit level economics. Now, as a startup and an emerging franchisor, the thing you're going to be lacking is franchisee validation. You're not going to have many of them or any of them. So you need to build your own validation. Most important, you need to build your brand story. And this is something I see that many startup franchisors drop the ball on. And so many vendors drop the ball with this because it's expensive and time consuming. And it sounds easy. Hey, hire our team. We're not going to charge you high fees. We're going to pay for some ads and we're going to get, 20, 30, 40 leads a month. Turns out you may get those leads, but what you're going to find out, they're not good qualified franchisees. They're not a good fit for you. And so not only are you wasting the money to get the leads, you're wasting the time in speaking with these prospects, going down a road that you shouldn't, or God forbid, signing them to a franchise agreement and finding out they're not the right fit for you. So how do you know if you haven't done the hard work in developing your brand story? Take a look at your franchise sales landing page. Do you have founder videos? Do you have a compelling value proposition? Is your brand differentiated from your competition, right? And here's some helpful questions. 1, if you go to your franchise sales website, your franchise sales landing page, your digital media, can you answer and do you answer what's unique about your franchise brand? What makes you different from everyone else? 2, if I'm a franchisee candidate and I'm looking at your digital media, what's your messaging as to my transformation? How can buying your franchise transform my life? And the other is, honestly and candidly, Answering the question of why I should buy your franchise and why I should buy it now. Why is it so compelling? If you don't have answers for these questions, doesn't mean you're not a good franchisor or you don't have a valuable system. Just means you haven't done the hard work to really dive into your brand story, and you would not be alone. What we see often are clients that come to us after 2 years switching to our firm to assist with legal. But when you talk to them about the digital, they speak about disappointment, spending money, and not getting the right leads. So focus on your brand story, focus on your digital validation. Once you have a great story, a great message, the transformation you offer, well, how are you going to validate that in the digital space? Are you going to deploy some digital marketing? Are you going to deploy a ton of videos on YouTube, founder stories, success stories, why you started the business, how it transformed your life? Think along those lines. The third reason, and this is a big one also, is you don't have enough capital, or you're not devoting the right amount of capital. The good thing about franchising and franchise success is you can scale. Year one, you season your franchise brand, you focus on your organic contacts, people that organically know your brand and are qualified and may be interested in buying a franchise. That's going to be your initial pool. And then slowly you're going to look to build up broker relationships, which are super efficient investments in terms of generating qualified franchise leads and closing deals. But brokers aren't going to be interested in your brand right away. They want to see a good item 19, good unit level economics, and they want to see franchisee validation. So when I talk about capital, consider industry standards. On average, it requires a budget of between $10,000 and $15,000 per franchisee candidate that you recruit, onboard, and sign. So theoretically, if I'm at the low end of that estimate, if I want to sign 10 franchisees this year, that's a $100,000 budget. And that's not a budget that we're just spending on digital ads, but also things that we discussed in mistake number 2, developing your brand story, your founder videos, your why you, why now, all the compelling media that's going to help filter out bad franchisees and magnetize attraction for good ones. But if we're talking between $10,000 and $15,000 per franchisee, let's get our budgeting aligned here. Now, if we have a limited budget, that's okay, right? Your initial phase of franchise growth, I look at it as the first 5 years. If you don't have that $100,000 budget, well, then let's be more effective on your brand story, but also let's adjust our expectations about the number of franchisees we're going to sign, because the temptation is you need to avoid vendors, going back to step 1, that are going to sell you some false hope and say, hey, maybe you could spend $2,000 a month and we're going to get you all these leads. It's not going to work out the way you're expecting. You're going to also miss out on opportunities. You're going to lose time in working with candidates that aren't qualified. And more important, you're not going to be putting in the foundational elements that you need to be doing, right? Which is your franchise sales landing page, your lead gen pages, but the most important thing about them, your brand story, your why you, why now. So the mistakes that we need to avoid, right, after franchising your business, and these are the biggest reasons why emerging brands don't gain traction. Good news is they eventually do, right, but you lose 2 years. So these mistakes are, 1, you're relying too much on outside vendors, which really just means you need to be actively involved, right? In franchise associations, International Franchise Association, involved with your legal team, involved in digital conferences and development. Second mistake, you haven't developed your brand story and your digital validation, and you need to do that before you spend any marketing dollars. And third, you're not investing enough capital or you have the wrong expectations.